deceivingly simple, but it's a very complex language. There's a lot of different topics related to it. Today I'm really going to keep things simple. I don't want you to get caught up into the technical jargon. So today really we're going to talk about 4 DML statements, which are select, used for selecting data, insert, for inserting, update for updating, and delete for deleting data. So kind of like the name is in tune with their function. So the first thing we're going to look at is the mighty select statement. The select statement forms the core of the SQL database language. And the reason for that is that most time we are really interested in getting data from a database. So the way to get data is a select statement. This is the most commonly used SQL command by far. You use the select statement to select or retrieve rows and columns from a database tables. It does not make any changes to the underlying data. This statement can use a subselect or a subquery. We will look at those a little later. The select statement syntax contains 5 major clauses, generally constructed as follows. So the important thing to note from this slide was that select is the most common used command. So here's kind of like what the basic select statement looks like. We're gonna start with select the field list, which really contains all your fields that you want to get the data from. Then you have a from clause, and this is where you will enter all the different tables. The next section is the where clause. This is where you would do your selection. Specifically, it relates to the rows or the records. The next two are group by and having. These are used for if you're trying to do some kind of aggregation on your data. And then finally you have the order by clause, which is used for sorting the results in an ascending or descending order. And at the bottom it says, notice that the bold code is required. So out of all these clauses, the only really 2 main things are the select clause and the from clause. So as an example, we will be using the AdventureWorks 2000 sample database for SQL Server. In order to do this, you need to launch the SQL Server Management Studio and connect to your local SQL instance. So let's go ahead and do that. You go to all programs, Microsoft SQL Server 2008, and then Management Studio. It's trying to log into my local instance. I'm using Windows authentication. And so prior to this, you would need to install an AdventureWorks database on your machine. So now here, if I switch back, it says expand the database tab and select AdventureWorks. Right click and select new query. Let me just go ahead and select this also. So I will expand the database tab. Here's AdventureWorks. Right click on it and select new query. Now this is the area in the Management Studio where you can write your code. And here's our command. Before I run this, I want to show you something, 2 things real quick. As you're typing in Management Studio on SQL Server 2008, there's a new feature. You will have a little bit of IntelliSense, which is really nice. So I started to type person and it pulled up the database and or the schema rather, and then within that schema I have a table called person, and as you keep going, notice that it finds your fields. So this is very nice. I've been working with SQL Server a long time, and I mean, this is great. This is going to save a lot of time. Another thing is that notice I typed, well, let me just go ahead and you can select the piece of code that you want to run. You click on this blue check mark to parse it, which basically means it's going to make sure the code is right, and then you execute it. So down here you can see that it returned my data. It comes in the format of the fields, which are all going this way. So here's our last name Wood, first name different people. You can kind of go across to see rest of the fields, come back, and now these are all the rows or the records. Okay, down below here you'll notice that it returned 87 rows, so we can kind of scroll all the way down there and find the records. Now what happens if I run this? I mean, this is the same piece of code, except it looks like it's all in lowercase. Notice that we got the same data. So in SQL Server, out of the box, it's case insensitive. It will give you the same data. Another handy feature that I wanted to mention is that typically the Transact SQL is written in uppercase. So it's good to be consistent. And I just did a shortcut to change it to uppercase, but you know, in case you were wondering how I did that, you could go to Edit, Advance, Make Uppercase, and I just used this shortcut. If you wanted to change this to lower, you could certainly do that. So a couple of 2 points. So that's our first select statement. Really nothing too exciting, but it will get us started in the right step. So on the bottom it just shows that it returned 87 rows. So let's look a little bit more on the select statement. Let's try the sales order header table with multiple conditions. So I'm just going to go ahead and select this code from here. And then I'm going to click on new query. Again, notice a couple of ways you can get to new query from here. Also, actually, you can select your server and select new query. But notice when I did that, it changed my database to master. So let's go ahead and paste that. You always want to make sure you're in the right database, because if I ran this on master database, we'll parse it and run it, it's going to give us an error saying that there is no object name that in master. So you have to make sure that you're in the right database. And let's go ahead and execute it. And so here we have basically, it's saying give me everything from sales order header table where the territory is 1 or ID is 1 and the order date is less than 2002. So we're looking at some old orders. Now one thing I forgot to mention here is